I'm Deborah Ferruccio. On Tuesday morning, November 18th, 2014, at 9 o'clock, I will appear in court at the Wake County Justice Center in Raleigh. On June 2nd, I was charged with second-degree trespassing at the state capitol. At closing time, after repeated requests by Capitol Police to vacate the premises, I refused to leave the Rotunda, and instead I stayed to deliver a message to Governor McCrory and to members of the North Carolina General Assembly concerning the necessity of an immediate, comprehensive cleanup of Duke Energy's Dan River coal ash disaster. I am choosing to defend myself, and I am basing my case on the necessity defense. I committed a minor violation, I admit, in order to call attention to a greater harm caused by the imminent threat posed by Duke Energy's February breaches of between 39 and 82,000 tons of toxic coal ash into the Dan River. Coal ash that washed 70 miles downstream and then emptied into Carr Lake Reservoir, which empties into Lake Gaston. This water system is known as the Roanoke River Basin, and it supplies crucial water to 2 million North Carolinians and Virginians, with Raleigh on tap as needed. And if the contents from the second pipe that collapsed are added, the total coal ash that is estimated in the river would be even greater. I took direct action in order to call attention to the crimes against humanity that were committed by Duke Energy's legalized, horrific coal ash assault on the Roanoke River Basin. I took direct action in order to call attention to the state and the EPA's decision to let Duke Energy do nothing to address the disaster for months, while deliberately allowing the contamination to wash downstream and settle onto bottom sediment. I called for a cleanup model based on transparency, on independent science, and on the EPA's allegedly preferred stakeholder, collaborative, problem-solving, environmental justice model. Since my call for a just and comprehensive cleanup of the Dan River, the EPA and the state of North Carolina have aborted 2 separate agreements to clean up the Dan River. And on July 18th, with only 2,500 tons of the coal ash removed from the river out of the estimated total, the cleanup was declared completed. This removal constitutes at best only about 5 to 6% of the total coal ash in the river. A few days later, North Carolina health officials lifted a swimming advisory for the Dan River, yet would not reveal to the public who made the call and on what data the decision was based, claiming that coal ash constituents, such as arsenic, lead, mercury, selenium, and more, are under the legal limits. The implication being, of course, that contaminants are as safe in the river as out of it. I took direct action at the Capitol because I know that the harm caused over time by the coal ash in the Dan River will continue to destroy the environment and natural resources and will adversely affect the public health for generations. Contaminants in coal ash build up in the body, especially affecting children. And chronic exposure to these coal ash toxins is hazardous and can cause cancers of the skin, bladder, lung, and kidney. They can affect blood cells and cardiovascular, nervous, and reproductive systems, and they can cause developmental delays, reduced IQ and mental retardation, and behavior problems. Without a timely and comprehensive, transparent, and independently validated cleanup, in 2, 5, 10 years to come, deformities of fish and other wildlife will surely reveal the extent of the ongoing coal ash poisoning and the lies of legal maximum contaminant levels. History will show that the responsible parties, Duke Energy, Governor McCrory, members of the North Carolina General Assembly, the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, the North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources, as well as EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy. They should be charged with crimes against humanity. Instead of living up to its repeated public statements about being fully responsible for the Dan River disaster, Duke Energy has spent millions on a media campaign to induce the public into believing that removing only 2,500 tons of the estimated total, a tiny fraction, constituted a comprehensive cleanup, thus setting the bar as low as possible for Duke Energy's cleanup of its remaining 32 North Carolina coal ash pits and ponds. The hope of officials must be to dupe the public into accepting toxicity as a given, as a necessary way of life, and to let Duke Energy continue to pollute with impunity. This coal ash disposal masquerade plan continues as former Governors Jim Hunt and Jim Martin are joining Governor Pat McCrory in a lawsuit against House Speaker Tom Tillis and other legislators over what branch of government will determine the makeup of the newly formed Coal Ash Commission, whether the executive or the legislative branch should determine the membership of this commission. The truth is, it doesn't matter if the governor or legislators decide who serves on the Coal Ash Commission, since both are controlled by Duke Energy. If the Dan River is ever to be restored to its condition previous to the February coal ash disaster, then stakeholders, those who are most directly affected by the coal ash in the river, grassroots citizens, and county and municipal officials who represent the people who depend on safe and clean water, they must be central to a transparent, shared, and collaborative decision-making process based on sound, independent science throughout the cleanup process. I know about this necessary collaborative process from my experience as one who helped convince Governor Hunt to create the joint Warren County State PCB Landfill Working Group, and as one who served for much of a decade on this working group, which was tasked with cleaning up the infamous PCB landfill in Warren County. The collaborative cleanup process was contentious, complicated, and difficult concerning the Warren County PCB landfill, yet it became a model, and it was promoted by the state and the EPA for environmental protection based on environmental justice. There are no easy answers to how we will dispose of coal ash. It is important that the coal ash in the Dan River is removed, and then the coal ash, the greater coal ash problem, is resolved. If necessary, the coal ash in the river should be put back into the Dan River coal ash pit until the entire coal ash pit is cleaned up in the future. Even the EPA contends that when stakeholders are part of environmental problem solving, the outcomes are better. Collaborative problem solving has worked successfully in toxic cleanups in the Northeast, cleanups such as in Lake Champlain and in the Hudson River. North Carolinians, there are no easy answers concerning what to do with all the coal ash that needs to be cleaned up in North Carolina and across the nation, but without a doubt, the coal ash must be removed from the Dan River immediately. And if necessary, it must be temporarily stored until a permanent solution is determined.